Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of It's Easy, Son, your life lessons on your journey to your purpose. And yes, I have another special guest. You all could stop teasing me now because all of my guests are special. And the young lady that's with us today is someone that I got to know during my time in Ithaca. She is someone that, how could I say this? Someone that I got to know working with. And when I made the transition from one place to the other, she stepped right in and not only did what I did, but elevated it to another level. I basically had to be at another place and looking at how I could have done it, watching her do it. But she is a fine lady, a mother, a wife. She was, we were friends with the same pastor, Pastor Nathaniel Wright. Yes. For the Calvary Baptist Church in Ithaca, New York. And it's just a pleasure. And I am humbled because I'm not going to give it away just yet. But since that time we met to where she is today, she is big time. I'm just watching from a distance. And I am so happy that our paths crossed and we can call each other friend. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I'd like to welcome to the podcast this week, Mrs. Janet Williams. Janet, how are you?
I am great, Gerald. Thank you so much. You have just embarrassed me with all those wonderful words that you had to say, but it's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm thrilled to be here with you today.
Well, you shouldn't be embarrassed because the things that you're doing, I'm watching from a distance and I'm smiling ear to ear and just seeing the things that you're doing and the moves that you're making and the impact that you're having in higher education and just on young people. It is phenomenal, and you deserve every accolade that comes your way.
Well, so thank you.
We are going to go through an exercise here. I have no preset questions. So what we're going to do is we are going to go on a journey with you. And I'm going to open up by just asking an open-ended question. And then based on your responses, the conversation will just evolve. Is that okay?
That sounds great.
All right. Let's jump right in. So who is Janet Williams? What grounds her? What was her early years like? What put in her the servant-mindedness, if that's a word, in her that she exhibits today in this dispensation in time? Who is Janet Williams?
Well, that's a really good question, Gerald. And thank you for asking me because it really does start with the beginning, where I was born and how I was raised. So let me just start with the beginning. I was born in San Antonio, Texas. My father was a Baptist pastor for 50 years, and my mother was a postpartum nurse. And they had 4 children. I'm the second of 4. And they really instilled in all of us paying it forward, giving back, serving, and helping. And that really is part of who I am and everything I do. And I can see that in my career and in my personal life. So with that in mind, I have worked on trying to help people and trying to serve people in just about everything I have done in my life. I involved in mission work and in my community work. And the industries that I worked in, Gerald, that I loved the most were the ones that I was giving back to people. So that is really kind of my core and my passion and what my parents have instilled in me. I knew at an early age I wanted to be in business. So I attended the University of Texas at Austin and earned my BBA in accounting in Texas. I got my MBA, I got my CPA. And after that, everything just kind of fell in place career-wise. And my first job was with Ernst & Young CPA firm. And it just kind of progressive career just continued from there. So that's kind of my beginning. That's kind of how I began my career and really what drives me.
So let me take you all the way back. Your dad, you said was a pastor for 50 years, and you're one of 4. Tell us a little bit about the early years and what was the home like and the discipline, because you just rattled off a number of accomplishments, Ernst & Young and all these things. That something had to be instilled from an early age. What was that like?
Yes. So my dad was the strict one. My mom was not so strict. You know, you knew when dad was serious about, living a right life and doing what was right and what needed to be done. So my dad baptized me, and he had baptized many young people in our community. He worked really hard. We weren't rich, but we had everything we needed. We had the food, the clothing, the shelter. We had everything we needed, and we had a loving family. And I really am blessed to have both my parents at that time alive and raising us. My dad is deceased now. My mom is still living. She's still in San Antonio. She's 87 years old and a very strong woman. Very strong, living her life to the fullest. I mean, being a first lady, being a full-time caregiver, being a postpartum nurse, working second shift, you can just imagine how hard it was, especially during that time, to raise a family. But they did everything that we needed for them to do for us. And they were very wonderful, wonderful parents. I was that middle child, but I didn't have that middle child syndrome, I would say. I didn't have any problems with being in the middle. I was a PK, but I was not a bad girl. I was too afraid, too afraid to do anything wrong. So I really tried to follow the rules, because I had this quiet determination that I was going to be successful. I was going to do what I needed to do to build wealth and a legacy in my family so that we could be successful. To all my family, my grandparents, my aunts, uncles, nieces, I wanted us all to thrive and to be successful.
So what's the sibling? Was there any sibling rivalry? Or were you all driven from such a young age? Because when I met you, I was just like, okay, this lady is polished. She is motivated. She's determined. She's a change agent. All of that was instilled from mom, dad, and sibling. Any sibling rivalry?
There wasn't a lot of sibling rivalry. We got along fairly well. There was just a little bit of, fussing a little bit. But if you ask them, they would say I was the tattletale. I was the goody two-shoes. I was the one that told on them when they weren't doing what they were supposed to do. But we get along. We got along just like most siblings got along, and we still get along really well right now. We love to get together for big family reunions. So we all have children, and all of our children grew up with going on holidays and Thanksgiving and Christmas activities together. I also have a half brother. I don't want to mention my half brother. My dad was very young when he was born, and we met him when I was about 16 or 17 years old. And he has been part of our lives. We just immediately welcomed him into our family and into our lives. And he's a PhD. He's a pastor. He's a minister, I should say. And he's a wonderful man, and love him and his kids as well.
Wow. So the religious, or the best way to say it, the ministering is something that is ingrained in you and drives that. So what was early school like? Because you are a very focused individual, and I would imagine the discipline in that home with your dad, your mom, and your siblings. What was your early years of academic preparation, extracurricular activities? Because what I've learned from all my guests is that there's never a straight line from where they started to where they are. Right. So can you tell us a little bit about that aspect? Because that's what you're known for today, is your attention to detail, but more importantly, your preparation.
Yes. And that preparation is so key. It's so key to really have those mentors, those parents or aunts and uncles, grandparents that will help you navigate this world. It was really important during those adolescent years in school. I grew up in a very poor community in downtown San Antonio, mostly brown and Black students in the elementary school and the middle school that I went to. I made good grades. I was very quiet and very shy person when I was in the primary school ages, but I could see downtown Hemisphere Tower and the tall buildings downtown from my house. And I could see business people getting on the bus and getting off the bus. And therefore that really kind of motivated me to want to do something more. There was more out there that I wanted to do. So school was really something I focused on. I used to like to read. I would read everything that, that I could find. And I think that prepared me really to go to college. It prepared me to study. I didn't pledge a sorority or fraternity in college because I was really very focused on making sure that I graduated, and I worked really hard at getting that first job.
Yeah.
It took grants, it took scholarships, it took student loans to make sure that we could go to college. I got to tell you a little story that at one point, I didn't think I was actually going to be able to accept the scholarship and go to the university because I didn't have enough money to go to college.
Wow.
So the the period had passed and I wasn't able to get into campus housing. And then I said, Mom, I have got to go away to college. I mean, we're thinking, oh, can go to community college and stay in town. And then she said, okay, well, let's figure it out. So I stayed in a dorm that was outside this college system near campus. My freshman year, I was living off campus, which is very unusual. But it was a matter of determination that I was going to go away and really experience that college experience. And so it was important to me. And when I was in college, Gerald, what really opened my eyes was study abroad. I had never left Texas, really. Definitely had never left the United States. And so that first study abroad experience one summer in Switzerland allowed me to really see the world. And there was so much out there to see and to do. And we would get year rail passes, and we would then be able to, on the weekends, go to Italy or France or the Netherlands. So that gave me that travel bug that I have now as well.
Oh, you still have the travel bug?
Oh, yes, I really do.
No, I would take it then, grade school, primary school, academic rigor, and you're focused there. But you get to the University of Texas and your major is accounting. So what was the high school preparation? What pushed you to accounting? Was it math? Was it quantitative stuff? Or was it, as you said, the business people coming off the buses? Was that the anchor for you to let you know, hey, well, I'm going to do this business thing and accounting and finance is it? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, well, it was just a little bit of both. I was very good at math. And I thought, at first I thought accounting was math, but you and I both know it's not. It's not math. It's a lot of FASBs and regulations as well. But I was good at math. And I thought, well, maybe it's accounting that I want to do. And I'm glad I did start out accounting because you can take that degree and do so much with it. It can advance your career into so many different areas. But that, I think, was the start of it. When I got to college, I was really good at statistics. And I talked to him about professors and I thought, well, maybe I want to be a statistician. And I talked to him and then I got the information that, well, you could probably work in the government. And I thought, not sure I want to work in the government. I want to be a businesswoman. So I continued with the accounting degree and then got the MBA and the CPA. But like I said, that will take you so far in your career. There's so many different career positions that I've had in industry and in higher ed that's helped me help others.
Yeah, so let's switch then because I'm intrigued now. So you University of Texas, you do your thing, you stay off campus your freshman year. I could never see you off campus freshman year, but since you say it, so you go through the University of Texas experience, and what was next? How did this career that we now all see, because you made several moves, you're like me, you made several moves. So how did this career get shaped?
Well, I graduated and I wanted to start in the CPA firm because I was told that's the best place to start. And you get to see so many different industries and audit when you start in the CPA firm. So I did that. I really wanted to be in a corporation working versus on the outside auditing. So I left the CPA firm and started with Kraft Foods. And I stayed with Kraft Foods for about 14 years, moving up in the organization. I had the opportunity to relocate with Kraft Foods. I was in Dallas, Texas, where I started, to all the way across the country to upstate New York, which was a very small dairy farm community in the hills. Actually, I had two choices. I could have gone to Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, or to upstate New York. And they were very, very similar. They were Kraft plants that made cheese. So you had to be close to the dairy farms. So my plan was to stay there maybe a year, 2 years, go back to Dallas or go to Chicago where the headquarters were.
Wow.
But it didn't work out that way. God had a different plan for me.
Mm.
I actually, enjoyed working there and being the plant controller. And then it was an opportunity to kind of expand I was being so far away from home. I really had to broaden my horizons and get to know some people. And I went to an aerobics class, and long story short, he was an engineer with Cornell Incorporated, and he was teaching aerobics at night, and now he's my husband. So
And he's a good
so
guy.
I married my aerobics instructor.
Yeah. And he's a good guy too. He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Great guy. We've been married now for 28 years.
Awesome, awesome. But upstate New York craft. I remember once when I was at Cornell, we took Provost Kotlikoff took us on a bus tour of all of the farmers that are Cornell alums, and actually saw how they made cheese.
Mhm.
I didn't realize that upstate New York had that much by way of cheese production. I would have never thought someone from a craft corporation would be there, but that now makes sense, because if you were to upstate New York, then when I first heard of you, you were at Cornell.
Right.
So how did that happen?
So after being at Kraft for a while, I wanted to move from plant controller to a business controller. And I started working with Corning Incorporated, the telecommunications company. And I really enjoyed learning everything I could and working in this corporate environment. But then I had an opportunity to lead a major ERP implementation for Lockheed Martin, a very large defense corporation. And so here I am building this team to implement SAP for Lockheed Martin. But that really was a wonderful experience, because it was a very short window of time to implement this tool in the US and overseas. But I love that job. I'm a patriotic person, and I really love the thought of helping our warfighters. This is this servant leader again coming out of me. We were getting out of wars at that time. We were getting out of Iraq and Afghanistan and other areas at that time. And so they were having a right sizing, a downsizing. And I was talking to a friend, and I was looking for something different. And he said, that passion that you have for warfighters, I bet you could have for helping students to find their purpose and to build their careers and help them be successful. So I interviewed at Cornell University, and he was right.
Oh, wow.
The student-centered focus of helping students deliver and be who they want to be was definitely another passion for me. So that's how I got to Cornell University.
That is interesting. I would have never thought that. Most of us that were started out in corporate, we stumble into higher education. Would you consider this a stumble, or would you consider this just divine providence?
I think it was divine. I really do. I think it was a divine providence that this is really where I needed to be. And I feel like I'm really making a difference in students' life, even in the finance and administrative role. There's so much that we can do, whether it's in the financial aid area or mentoring, or there's just so much that we could do to help build the programs that will help students be successful.
Yeah. But before we go any further, you've shared a lot already. And I'm always mindful of the fact that you have shared that careers are built over time by making choices. When you look today, and we'll get to where you are in a minute, but as you look at moving from high school to college to the corporate sector, and then ending up in a higher education institution, what would you say to the audience has been the greatest lesson you've learned, and the greatest hardship that you have learned?
Let me start with lessons. I think the greatest lessons is really around resilience and adaptability. You're going to run into to areas that are unclear, that are uncertain. And you're going to have to figure it out. You're going to have to make some tough decisions. And as a leader, you have to move change forward. So when you're in situations like I was talking about a right sizing, a downsizing, when you're in situations like that, you just have to be resilient, you have to stay focused, and you have to adapt. And I think that will take you far in your career. I guess the toughest lesson, Gerald, may be around making sure that you are focusing on what really is important. Family is important. I have a son, I have a husband, I have a mother, I have family that's really important. When you're that far away from them, it's sometimes that creates some distance. You got to work hard at making sure you're keeping those lines of communications open. So I think maybe that was a difficult time, just being so far away from my family. But, that mobility, I think, is also part of the adaptability too. So it's a pro and a con.
Yeah.
Figure that out.
Since you split the middle, I'm going to ask a question this way. Given your career path and what you know today in the labor force and the market, if you were mentoring, I'll say, a young female, would you still advocate for the path that you took? Or would you advocate for a path that's different? The reason why I'm asking that is because today, upward mobility and how the workforce changes so fast, you don't have people staying at places for a very, very long time, but they want to move. So how would you see that? And specifically advising young ladies who'll be listening to this podcast.
Right. Well, I guess, everybody's different. Everybody's journey is going to be a little bit different. But I would advise them to don't go it alone. Reach back to your mentors and your coaches and that network. Make sure that you are keeping those relationships strong, but always try to be adaptable. Try to be mobile. When your corporation is looking to promote you, advance you, and want you to move, it might be an opportunity to take that move, especially as I was single. There was no reason, holding me back from that.
Yeah.
So I really would advise them to take advantage of those opportunities whenever you can, because you will grow and you will learn and you will be a better, leader, I believe, when you experience a lot of different things.
So let's continue with your journey. So Cornell University, and then you were there at Cornell. That's when I first heard the name Janet Williams, because I was on the South Hill at Ithaca College, and you were on the East Hill at Cornell. But tell us a little bit about that, and eventually how we got to meet and work together. I think that's a story that people need to hear.
Okay. Well, I was working in the College of Engineering and the College of Life Sciences as an administrative director at Cornell University. And I saw that there was an opportunity to be a controller at Ithaca College. And I thought I really want to get back into the controller role. So when I applied for the position, I met Gerald. He was wonderful and kind and so helpful that I was hoping that you would give me the offer. You would offer me that opportunity to work at Ithaca College. And I'm so grateful that you did. There was a lot I still needed to learn about higher ed. I'd been in industry for a while, and I really needed to learn about higher ed. And you were a wonderful mentor that helped me to understand a little bit about the differences and how to operate in the higher ed, especially at that level in higher ed. So thank you. Thank you again for being one of those first mentors in higher ed for me. So that's kind of how we met.
Yeah, that's where we met. And I'll say no, thank you, because you came at a time when we were going through quite a bit, trying to drive change and resistance to change, but we had a great team of people. But I was so happy when I saw your resume, and also, did some calls around. But now that you got into the controller's role, I up and left. I'm sorry, I want to apologize. I up and left, but in that role, and then you moved up. You moved up on an interim basis. So tell us, what was that like? Because you had to be a quick study.
Well, you're right, because you left. And you went to Cornell University, but I was so happy for you. I was happy that you had that opportunity to go to Cornell and in the role that you went to Cornell, very high role. So I was really hoping that I would have the opportunity to step into your position as the interim vice president for finance and administration and chief financial officer at Ithaca College. And thankfully I was. And I was there for, I want to say about 3 years, at Ithaca College. And I learned so much, working with so many different leaders and new presidents. And it was just a wonderful learning experience at Ithaca College. And it was a dynamic place to be. And it had gone through some difficult times. And Gerald, you really helped that university through that difficult times and the unrest that was happening. But I learned from you by watching you in that space as well, because you are going to go through some difficult times. There are going to be some, misunderstandings and changes in leadership. And you really, as a leader, need to be that steady, focused person who's making sure that your faculty and your staff know that you're optimistic and that we can get through any of those difficult times. So you were really, a mentor to me at Ithaca College.
Well, I'm glad and I'm humbled to hear you say that, because at the end of the day, it's always about the team. So as you think through, because now you're at what I would consider one of the best liberal arts institutions in the United States, in Elon University. I call it one of the Ivy pluses. People say, well, it's too small and it's in the South and all this kind of stuff. You have the Ivy League, which, is 8 of them. You're not going to get into that, but you have institutions around the country that we call Ivy pluses. And I do believe the institution that you now lead is trending in that direction. But what was that journey like? Because after Ithaca, you went to Wake Forest, and then tell us a little bit about that, and then your transition to where you are today.
Okay. After I'd been in upstate New York for about 26 years at this point in time. So I convinced my husband it was really time to move south. And so the opportunity came to be the vice president for finance at Wake Forest University, a wonderful institution. I was very happy to get the opportunity to move to North Carolina and to take that position as well, working for a wonderful leadership team there as well, a very high quality institution. My son went to college around that time and he moved out. And so it was an opportunity again for me to move to the chief financial officer position. And when a recruiter called me and said, hey, have you ever thought about Elon? I said, I know Elon. I've heard of Elon. I know Elon is a wonderful institution. So when the opportunity came, I definitely applied. And I was so happy to have been given the opportunity to work with a wonderful leadership team at Elon University. It's something like I've never experienced before. The walls are low. It's very collaborative across divisions, very engaging, and 100% focused on students and what is best for students. Very student-centric institution. Mm-hmm. So it's been a wonderful experience, and I want to build on the legacy that Elon had with the previous leaders there. It has had a success coming from a small college to a national university now. So we are very excited to be moving forward and building on that legacy.
You should be very excited, because when I was at Johnson C. Smith there in North Carolina, Gerald Whittington, your predecessor, yes, was one of the people when Dr. Yancey hired me, and she sent me to NCICU. I think you guys still have that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I didn't know what I was doing. And Gerald Whittington looked across the table and said, hey, come sit with us. Come have dinner with us. And that was the start of a relationship. But as you think about higher education today and being at a prestigious institution like Elon, what is it that you're looking for in your students and the impact that Elon can make? Because, you and I are in a space where everyone now questions the validity of a college education and all of those things. So now that you're servant leadership from the seat that you sit in, mm-hmm, how do you view this? How do you make this make sense for all of us?
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe everybody in a university has a role to be a mentor, to our students, whether you're faculty, whether you're staff, whether you're peer. You can share your experience. You can share your journey with these students. These students are bright. These students are talented. They're looking forward to learning as much as they can so that they can change the world and be successful in this world. So I always, whenever I can, have an opportunity to speak to our Student Government Association or to teach a class at Gerald Whittington's, graduate, or help him in a graduate class, or to just meet with students one-on-one. That is a passion for me. I love doing that. Elon is known for being one of the number one study abroad students. I always encourage students.
Really?
Yes, it is.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yes. I encourage them to take that opportunity and study abroad. It would give them a global perspective. It would show them so much more about themselves and about the world. So I'm really excited when students are doing that. I'm actually even working on taking some faculty and staff who've not traveled outside the continental United States to London so that they will have that global perspective as well. And they'll be able to interact with students and share that experience amongst each other. So I would say that would be the other thing that I would tell young people. But then last thing I would tell them is around well-being, to always be focused on your well-being, whether it's emotional well-being, community well-being, social well-being, purpose well-being, physical and financial well-being, to really focus on those 6 dimensions of well-being. And I know my university is focused on that for them. So it's so important that you take care of yourself, and all of those dimensions will help you be successful.
I'm looking at you, and I can see the passion in your eyes, and just how your diction and tone when you talk about servant leadership. If you were to do a juxtaposition between when you were a student at the University of Texas and what you see in the young people that are on your campus today, is it the same or is it different?
Let's see. UT was a very big school, very big school. And I really focused on making sure that I learned as much as I possibly could and was engaged in areas that helped me to be successful. Students today are very passionate. They're living in a world that has a lot of political chaos. They're living in a world where it's a very small world with the social media that exists today. We didn't have that when I was in college.
Right.
We weren't tied to our cell phones like that. So young people have so much pressure on them nowadays. And it's really coming from the outside. It's coming from, people who are maybe just not being kind to them. So I would really encourage them to find that purpose. Find that community that really cares about them, those deep relationships, pay attention to their personal emotions, and to really find those people that can help move them to a good place in their life, to be authentic about who they are, and to really find advisors and mentors and coaches that will help them through those difficult times. Because it really is hard for young people today. It really is different than when I was in college.
You're absolutely right. I tell people all the time, people will say young people today are entitled and all this kind of stuff. I'll say to them, they're living in a different world under different circumstances.
Right.
And a lot of things that we thought the way we grew up, just in some ways, some baseline is still there, but it's not the same. They are more knowledgeable. They are more attuned because they have tools we didn't have. And they have ideas and perceptions that we would never garner at their age. But you've said 3 words now that I'm going to ask you to try to tie them all together. You've used the word core, which you said your very core is. You've used the word passion, which means something. And you just used the word purpose. Do you see them as 3 mutually exclusive, I'm going to say, character traits? Or do you see them roll together to create an ethos, if you will, by which someone will govern their lives?
Yes. Well, my core, my passion, my purpose are really all together. It's really one one area of being a servant leader, being a compassionate leader, someone who really wants to make sure that people feel valued, that students feel that they belong, to feel that they can make a difference. I try real hard when I'm working with my people, my direct reports, is to make sure that number one, they feel appreciated. Them saying thank you. I'm writing them notes, or that I'm just making sure that they know that I appreciate the hard work that they do. And then the second thing, I try to make sure that I'm engaging and collaborating and working with them. Our staff, our people want to know that they're part of what's happening, not just being told this is going to happen. So it's really important that you make sure that they are involved, because I believe when there is more collaboration, there's better decisions, there's better execution, and there's better results. And then the last thing I would say is that people want to know that you really care and that you can show them some grace when they're going through difficult times. Yes. And that really is part of that compassionate leadership, I believe. Mm-hmm. That if they're going through a difficult time, if they need time off, if they just need to be away and need to take the kids to Disney, it's so important to make sure that you're attuned to their well-being and attuned to exhaustion and burnout. So that's what I would say. That's kind of who I am, and it's all wrapped up in one of being a compassionate and servant leader.
I think you should be a public speaker. Has anybody ever told you that?
I heard that every now and then, but what, Gerald? It really is. I mean, everybody knows that they have to plan. But you plan, but you have to be humble enough to practice too. What I'm saying? So public speaking takes a lot of practice.
But I want to tell you, Miss PK, you have a gift. You have a gift. I want to ask this question of you that I've asked pretty much all my guests. If you had your druthers and money and economics was not a factor, what's the one or two things that you would want to change in our world?
Oh, wow. You made me think about my years of I was doing a lot of missions work and traveling to Haiti and to Jamaica and Belize and Liberia and Accra. That really also spoke to my passion. If I could change anything, I would change poverty. I would change atrocities in this world. I really just cannot, it hurts my heart to see the atrocities that's happening in different areas of the world. So, I believe that with prayer and fasting that God will bring about changes when it's time. But I also believe that people have to work hard. To whom much is given, much is required. So if I could do anything, I would make sure that young people had the opportunities that a lot of young people in America have to live their lives in safety and have the opportunities to be all that they can be.
Yeah. How did the mission work? Because the mission work obviously has a secular aspect to it, but mission work in and of itself is a spiritual aspect. What was that like? Because you mentioned some countries that I want to go to, Ghana, Liberia. My wife and I are thinking about a continent hopping in Africa. When our last child is finished with her studies and we can afford it, we want to do it. But what impact did that have on you going around, being from the United States or the Western Hemisphere, if you will, and going into these countries and trying to help? What did that do for you as an individual?
Well, it really changed me, and it changed a lot of young people that I took with me as well. It was really part of a church ministry, and I really wanted the community to work together around this missions ministry. I had a church missions ministry, but I wanted to work with the Wesleyan church. I wanted to work with the non-denominational church. So by meeting with those other denominations and other missions ministry, we were stronger and we were better together when we were going on these missions trips. It started out, raising funds to build a house or to build a well, and then making sure that the people on the ground had the funds that they need, or to build a library had the funds that they needed to build that project. And then we would come and spend a week or two wrapping it up and, finishing it off. Gerald, I remember a situation, I think it was in Haiti. We were building homes. We had raised the money to build 2 or 3 homes. And we were talking to a mother and 2 young ladies who were homeless. And we were asking them, young ladies, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? And the answer was, I don't know. I can't think of anything. But the moment we moved the furniture in that little house, we moved them into their own separate bedrooms, they came alive. They could dream. What do you want to be? I want to be a teacher. I want to be a nurse. I want to go to school. In addition to building them a home, we paid for their private school because students have to, in some of these third world countries, have to pay to go to primary school. That just blessed my heart to know that I was helping these young people to dream about what they wanted to be just by giving them a home.
That must have been powerful. So before the home was finished and the furniture in, despair was running rampant. And now that they have something that they call their own, hope comes.
Yes.
That will preach.
That will preach.
That will preach. But I mean, that's something that I would want to experience one day. I have been in several churches. The Park Church in North Carolina, obviously I was raising a family, so I couldn't make that, but they do those kinds of things to Kenya and so on. Yeah. What was it like on the African continent? Same experiences?
It was a little bit different. I was traveling with a pastoral ministry. A pastor was taking members of his delegation and others who wanted to help bring materials and lessons to pastors to help them build up in their ministries in Liberia. And actually in Liberia, we were there right after the war. So the war had just ended. And it still wasn't, there was a little bit of skirmishes still happening. So that was really an interesting opportunity because the people in Liberia were beautiful people and they were sick and tired of war. They were sick and tired of the devastation and they wanted to move forward in peace. So it was really exciting to be part of that ministry, to bring this pastoral resources to ministers who were really trying to rebuild that country. In Accra, it was the same thing. It was a pastoral ministry with teaching and lessons and materials.
Yeah, I have a friend that lives in, I believe she lives in, I used to say Accra. You're saying Accra.
Accra, Ghana.
Accra, Ghana. Well, I used to say Accra, Ghana, but we were on a track team together at Howard University, and she has moved to Ghana. She has left the United States and moved to Ghana. And, as I'm watching you again and hearing you speak on this particular issue, when you sit back in your quiet time, given your experiences there and what you do in your day-to-day job, at this wonderful institution, Elon University, outside of the work you do, what occupies your mind? Because what you just shared with me, that's heart. That is on your heart. How do you, knowing how busy you are, how do you still feed that servant leadership and ministry? And I believe that's a calling that God has for you. How do you satisfy that?
Well, I do try to make sure, outside of work, that I'm, volunteering. I'm volunteering for children's homes, and I'm on the board of directors for Habitat for Humanity. Again, homes.
Homes, yeah.
So I'm volunteering for areas that I'm really passionate about, that I think really can make a difference in families' lives, in the lives of young people. So, we're really busy. I know you're busy as well with University of Central Florida, but it's so important to make time to give back to your community. And I'm busy with my church as well and small Bible studies. So that really is my passion, to make sure that I'm serving people.
Wow, this is such an inspirational interview. And I'm telling you, I know the good ones when I hear them, and this is going to bless a lot of people, because you're right. We work so hard and we work long hours, but it's finding having a life outside of work is just as important. When you think about your trajectory and what is next for Janet Williams?
Well, I'm very happy at Elon University. I hope I can stay at Elon and in this role as chief financial officer for a really long time, because I feel valued and I feel like I'm making a difference. When I retire, I'm hoping that I can do some consulting and still help people become all that they can be. So I am very happy where I am. I'm looking forward to enjoying North Carolina, looking forward to my son graduating from college.
Yeah, when is he graduating?
He's a rising senior, knock on wood,
Oh,
he'll graduate next year. So
oh wow, wow. And I see you looking very, very pleased there, Mom.
yes, congratulations to you too. Your daughter's going to be graduating
Yes.
this year.
Yeah, yeah. As they say, God willing, and the creek don't rise, or whatever they say. I am looking forward to that. She has been with us all summer. Now I'm going to turn a little bit now to your spiritual side a little bit, and being the daughter of a pastor, and this is kind of like a question that is geared towards, and I ask this of everybody, so it's not that because you're a preacher's kid or anything. You mentioned something that kind of got my attention when you mentioned the geopolitical issues around the world, the atrocities around the world, and the things that we here sometimes in the Western Hemisphere or in the United States take for granted. But if you wanted to impact lives of individuals to get them involved in this work, what would be some of the things that you do from a pastoral or ministerial standpoint to get folks excited about it? The Bible tells us that the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. So I'm pulling on your spiritual side now. What can we do differently? Because I just left church, and we were just talking about all the things that needs to be done, and it's time to move. Mm-hmm. But can you talk a little bit about that from your heart, if you will?
Right. I think it's so important to tell the story. It's so important to talk about your experiences and talk about your missions work and talk about your testimony, because people need to hear it. People need to know what has moved you and how God has blessed you from a spiritual perspective, where God has brought you from, and how he has brought you to where you are. Sometimes if you don't tell it, people think, oh, you were just born with a silver spoon in your mouth and but it's not that way. Most of us have had difficulties in our lives, especially people of color have not had the access or the privilege to that others have had to move forward. So you had to work just a little bit harder. You had to have a little bit more of support. So Gerald, I would say it's just so important to tell the story and to reach back and to help people to move forward and let them know that to whom much is given, much is required. So when they are successful, they need to pay it forward as well.
But what's the painful thing for me sometimes, Janet, is that we see so much of the need. And I've been around people who are very, very successful. And that's the furthest thing from their mind is, they're in the mode of, I got mine, you get yours. And it's disheartening sometimes to see. You kind of stay away from that. And the reason why I asked that question is because I do firmly believe that, in this life moves in dispensations in time. And I just believe in my heart of hearts that all of what we're seeing on a global scale is happening for a reason. I just don't know what that reason is, but you just touched on something that I hope that maybe you will have the answer at some point, is to prick the hearts of humans to say, look, I can help somebody because I have more than enough. But we have about 12 minutes left. I told you it was going to run fast. What did I do? But I want to turn it over to you and ask, is there anything on your heart or on your mind that I have not asked by way of a question that you would like to share?
I guess the only thing maybe I would talk a little bit about is what's happening in the Supreme Court. and the decision to, outlaw affirmative action. This is something that, is one of those things that you have to be resilient and adaptable about. So maybe I would just talk a little bit about that, and maybe you could share a little bit about your perspective and how, you're dealing with it as well. But I just want to say that it's really so important that we realize that this decision was based on that it's unconstitutional and it's no longer necessary. Well, to me, that is unconscious to the reality of the world that we live in, and that you shouldn't distort your vision or your mission around diversity, inclusion, because if you really believe it has an educational value to diversify your campus for all students, then you need to stay focused on your vision and your mission. And there are ways to be adaptable with this decision. The court said that you can't check a box on your race, but the court also said that students can write about their authenticity. They can talk about their lives. And that's a way to identify, students of underrepresented populations. There are ways that with funding, socioeconomical information is another way. Working with community organizations and outreach programs and churches to identify those talented young people in this underrepresented populations. There are so many ways to make sure that once you recruit those students, that they know that they belong. And you can do that with resources, with programming, so that they will stay and that you will retain them. Education and training. So I encourage people to be resilient, to be adaptable. Don't distort your mission around this, because it is really important to have diversity, equity, and inclusion on our college campuses.
Yeah. Well, that's a topic I kind of stay away from here in our state.
Okay.
Our state is going through some transitions right now, and people have asked me all the time to comment. And you know me, I'll just be honest with you. I say no comment in many ways, because once you comment, you become part of the story.
I understand.
But it's an evolving situation. It is evolving. As I look, for example, the Department of Education, if you look at the data, one of the things I spend a lot of time on, and your point is well taken, is what's happening with the enrollment cliff, number one, and number two is the diversification of the entire population of the United States. So even when we look at it through that lens, we're still going to have a challenge across the nation. Why is that? Because the students that are coming through the pipeline are primarily Black and brown students. But when you go further into the data, as I was explaining to a colleague at the recent NACUBO gathering here, is you're still going to have that challenge in that they are the ones that can't afford a college experience. Okay. But if everything is changing around you, at some point, you are going to have to step into the flow rather than pushing back against the flow. What is that fault line? I'm not so sure, but I do know in the Northeast, it's going to be a challenge.
Right.
It is going to be a huge challenge, because that's where the enrollment cliff is hitting in the most profound ways. But at the same time, those are the institutions with resources. So they're going to go all across the South and the Midwest and out West to get students, because they have to shape these classes to the point that you just made. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Right. But as you said, every state, every institution is different. But I will say it is going to be something that everyone is going to be watching for years and years to come. Right. And, it's interesting the way how you described it. Private institutions handle it different than public institutions.
I understand.
It's what has been very, very interesting so far.
That's so true. You're right. I appreciate your comments on that. And it's so important that as leaders that we're doing what we know we need to do to be successful and for our students to be successful.
Well, what we're trying to do is to make sure that the next generation, we prepare them well. And that, at the end of the day, is what it's all about. So we got about 5 minutes left, and I'm going to ask you the very last question, and then we will wrap up.
Okay.
If you could go back, and from when we started with this interview at the very beginning to where we are now, is there anything that you would have changed?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
You're that confident, huh? That's good. I mean, that's good. Why are you so confident in saying no?
I believe that, my life was God's divine plan. I really don't believe that I would be who I am today if something had been different in my life. Even the tough times taught me valuable lessons. So even when, growing up in San Antonio and not being, not having a whole lot of money, but like I said earlier, we had love. We had everything that we needed during that time frame. And, thinking I wasn't going to be able to go away from college, but, being persistent and determined to be in college, even if I had to live off campus, and being mobile and moving, doing what I needed to do. It wasn't always easy, but doing the things I needed to do to stay focused and to be successful and to bring other people along with me. I think that has to be part of my equation anyway, because it's not just about me. It really is about serving others, which my father and my mother has taught us at a very, very young age. So I just think that my journey is my life story, and I really wouldn't change anything about it.
Now I'm gonna come clean and just honestly say I asked you that question on purpose because I know that's probably what's going to be your answer. And that's just who you are, Janet. That's from the first day that I met you. That's just who you are. You are driven by a desire to do and help so many people. And I just want to say, I'm glad that our paths crossed.
Thank you.
I'm glad that I can call you friend. And I'm glad that we are colleagues in higher education to make a difference and create the future leaders of this world. And it's been a pleasure knowing you and spending time working with you and getting to see you about a month ago, 3 weeks ago?
Yes, I am glad I ran into you at Nakubo, Gerald, because it is a pleasure to have you as a friend and a colleague and a mentor as well.
It is my pleasure. We do this because we love it. So Janet, here we are at an hour, close to an hour, and I told you we would get through it and it would be this way, but thank you for doing this. I can tell you that the young ladies and the young girls and the grandmas that listen into this podcast, your words, your soothing tone, your voice, your diction, your story is going to be a blessing to them all. And with that, I just say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much, Gerald. God bless you.
Yeah, all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. We just spent the last hour with my good friend, Janet Williams, who has shared an incredible story. Now, I hope you guys listen intently because the variations on her career from a corporate standpoint, but the intersection with her faith and her core and her passion and her purpose, I firmly believe that's what we need in our society today, because we are at a crossroads when it comes to giving back and lifting others up. We've done it in the past, but we're going to need to do it more and more and more. And today we just heard from someone who does that as part of just her very being. So until next week, remember, this is It's Easy, Son, your life lessons on your journey to your purpose. Until next week, take care and God bless.